On the first day of relaxed measures, Singapore reported 18 new local cases, the highest in over 10 days. Testing underway for 85 stall holders at Bukit Merah View following a new cluster at a nearby food centre. And after being closed for a month, GRADUAL reopens its doors to welcome back shoppers. You're watching The Big Story live from the Straits Times newsroom. Hello, I'm Olivia Quay. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode. As we enter Phase 3 heightened alert today, Singapore reported the highest daily number of local Covid-19 cases since June the 3rd. 18 new cases in the community confirmed, as well as 1 case in the migrant worker dorms. Of these 19 locally transmitted cases, 2 are currently unlinked. The remaining 17 linked cases comprised 13 identified during quarantine and 4 detected through surveillance. The other 6 cases today were imported, 3 being Singaporeans or PRs. More details will be released later tonight. So from today, more people are allowed to hang out together again, places letting in more patrons, and GRADUAL Changi Airport is also back in business as it reopens its doors to the public today after a month-long closure. Now this comes as some 2,500 workers tested negative for COVID-19 and close to 90% of eligible staff have gotten at least 1 dose of the vaccine. Precautionary measures have also been stepped up, including the purging of air-conditioned air 2 hours before the mall opens every day. When the Straits Times was there this morning, visitors, mostly families with young children, arrived in drips and drabs, and they were generally assured by the measures to prevent another outbreak. Meanwhile, to welcome back visitors, GRADUAL is offering free parking from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. from today until July the 11th, I beg your pardon. Schools and institutes of higher learning will gradually allow more students back in the new term. Here's a look at the new arrangements. From Monday, June 28th, students in primary 4 to 6, secondary 3 to 5, as well as all JC and Millennia Institute pupils will return to school. But those in Sec 1 and 2 will be on home-based learning for a few more days and return to school on July the 1st. P1 to P3 pupils will be on HBL for the whole of June 28th, the whole week of June 28th. Then, on Tuesday, July the 6th, all levels will return to school. IHLs will also progressively allow students back on campus. From June 21st, small group classes or consultations that were previously conducted online can resume on campus. Students will continue to return for essential in-person sessions like labs and practicals, as well as for exams with no more than 50 people per venue. But classes and lectures with more than 50 people will keep being held online. And according to Second Education Minister Maliki Osman, over 101,000 students have gotten their first vaccine dose out of the 300,000 or so who have registered for their appointments.
Of the 300,000 that have already booked their slots, about 101,000 have already received their first vaccination. And this is very encouraging. What's even more encouraging is our first batch, our graduating students. About 90% of them have already registered, and about 75% have received their first doses. So it's very encouraging to see how the students have been responding to all these invitations and SMSs that's been given to them. What we hope is for all students to register and get vaccinated for the first dose by end of June. And if you look at the time frame, 6 to 8 weeks later for the second vaccination, we hope that students will be able to get vaccinated with the second dose by end of August. But that all depends on the response rate. It's very encouraging today. By and large, we have about 80 to 90% of responses from the different categories, and we hope more will step forward. And if everyone steps forward and register, we should be able to vaccinate all our students by the end of August.
Dr. Maliki was speaking during a visit to ITE College West to launch the vaccination centre there. It's one of 3 dedicated MOE vaccination centres that opened today to support the rollout for students. The other centres are at ITE College campuses in Ang Mo Kio and Simei. A 4th will open at the Raffles City Convention Centre tomorrow. Now this week, the 3 ITE centres will provide vaccinations for its students in the mornings and for all other students from 1:30 p.m. But from next week, the centres will be open to all students.
I think there is understandably some parents who, for various reasons, have not responded to the registration and booking process, and we continue to reach out to them because we want to make sure that the more they see their friends getting the vaccination. So the first thing I ask many of the students is, have your parents gotten their vaccination? And most of them say yes. So we know that parents who have gotten their vaccination are very supportive of their children getting vaccinated. So I think maybe for those cases who have not been responding, it might be useful to also get in touch with the parents themselves to ask their concerns that they may have about getting that vaccination. The last thing we want is for students to be identified as you have been vaccinated and you have not been vaccinated, because we do not want a situation where one becomes stigmatized for not being vaccinated. Certainly, we have to respect decisions by parents whether they would like their children to be vaccinated or not. We hope that the environment is one where everyone in the school feels safer now that the majority would have had their vaccination by the time they resume school at the end of June, and hopefully by the time they come back for their second doses towards July and August later on.
Following last night's confirmation of a new cluster at Block 115 Bukit Merah View Market and Food Centre, 85 stall holders at Block 116 are undergoing mandatory swab tests. Multimedia journalist Kimberly Zhao with more.
We're currently standing at Block 125A Bukit Merah View, where a temporary site has been set up for Covid-19 testing. Now, as you can see behind me, the area has been fully blocked off with huge white barriers, making sure that no one from the outside can look in. And since noon, there have been very little people coming in and out, but that's only to be expected because only the 85 stall owners of 116 Bukit Merah View Hawker Centre are allowed. In fact, we saw a significant number of people get turned away and asked to come back either tomorrow or on Wednesday. We spoke to some of these people to get their thoughts.
They asked me to come tomorrow or day after for the shop, for residents only.
Maybe the lack of information was not passed down, but it's okay lah. You have to understand that they want to test the ones that come in contact first so yeah.
I was lazy about it. I just saw the news and there was testing, and because I live in Tiong Bahru and the Tiong Bahru market also was hit. Then I thought, I better get tested because I was in the market at the same day. Yeah, I guess I should have looked, but I just figured that you could come in and get tested.
The Bukit Merah View Market and Hawker Centre at Block 115 will reopen on Tuesday. But with a new cluster reported there, we spoke to some stall owners tested today to find out if they have concerns about overall business in the vicinity.
现在反正是影响到一点点了，然后就是讲怕传染到自己哦，还有朋友哦、同事他们这样子啦，多多少少会啦，38%是这样。
没办法，一定有这个，我们看疫情也这样了，我们大家要合作比较好。
Meanwhile, the staff and tenants who had been working at the Block 115 market from May 25th have been quarantined and will be swabbed during quarantine. Kimberly Zhao for the Straits Times.
Well, thanks very much, Kim, for that report. Meanwhile, over in Hougang, All Saints Home underwent cleaning and disinfection after a nursing aide tested positive last Saturday during the home surveillance testing for staff members. Since then, in addition to the deep cleaning of the premises, staff and residents were tested and all results returned negative. Well, out out of all marriages here in 2019, 22.9% were inter-ethnic unions from 5.6% back in 1965. Now, observers the Sunday Times spoke to said this increase is a positive trend of cross-cultural interaction and inclusion between communities. But they also acknowledge the persistence of problematic views centered on racial hierarchies and stereotypes. For instance, what happened earlier this month. In this viral video, Poly lecturer Tan Boon Lee confronting mixed-race couple Dave Parkesh and Jacqueline Ho. Now, it highlights the racially insensitive, racially offensive encounters that mixed-race couples experience on a regular basis. One couple, Jacqueline Louis and Abraham Christopher, told the Sunday Times about an incident in a cab when the driver asked Jacqueline why she had to date an Indian man and if Singapore had run out of Chinese boys. Well, Jacqueline and Abraham join me now. Hi guys, welcome to the show. So you have been married for over 5 years. Before that though, did you have discussions about your relationship as an interracial couple and, I guess the challenges that come with it? Abraham, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I'd say not really challenges, but I think as a couple who are learning to love each other and learning more about each other, naturally there are differences between the two of us. And that goes beyond just race, right? Even from religion, we weren't the same religion, and from like our personal preferences and the way we were brought up, our upbringing. But I think if we look at racial culture, definitely there were a few differences where I needed to learn some things from her and she needed to learn some things from me. So some of the ones that I know off the top of my head was like the etiquette around dining culture in the Chinese culture. So, for example, I had to ensure that I acknowledged the elders before we started eating. And if I didn't do that, then that might come across as quite rude. Or even during Chinese New Year, I remember like telling her that I'm really shy. Do I really have to go up to your aunties and your uncles and like give them the oranges and say all these auspicious words? Can I just wave and say Kong Ji Fa Chai from where I am? And she was like, no, that's going to come across as really rude. So I had to learn quite a lot of things, but it was really an eye-opening experience for me, and I really enjoyed all of those. And I think likewise for Jack, who was like very, very into the Indian food, and I had to teach her how to eat with hands and stuff.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think just listening to what Abraham had to say, I think less of challenges, but really understanding each other, like differences in like cultural upbringing, I would say. And I think Singaporeans, we all being foodies, food is one thing that I think we really kind of worked on together as well. So we really looked up like different recipes, Indian, Chinese recipes. We tried out like North Indian food, South Indian food, and that kind of really like spiced up our relationship.
Well, Jacqueline, in speaking to our colleague, you singled out an incident with a cab driver 6 years ago. Aside from this instance, what are the day-to-day microaggressions that you guys face as an interracial couple?
I think I would say that we have been very blessed in the sense that we haven't really had such confrontational incidences like we have seen over the last couple of weeks. I would say there are those minor passing comments from like kopitiam aunties or like wet market stall holders where they will ask questions like your boyfriend or your husband. And I think to us really, to me, I think I would think that those are more inquisitive comments or like pleasantly surprised, or maybe I'm just a bit more nonchalant towards such comments, but I wouldn't think that they are being racist in any sense in that way.
I think for me, I'm more bemused than anything that some people may find our relationship exotic. In my family, a lot of my relatives, immediate and extended, have dated and even married people outside of their race or religion. So I always grew up with that as being the norm and never like we are something unique or special. I think we've been kind of blessed in that way to not have faced any kind of aggression, micro or macro, outside of that cab. Yeah. Right.
Well, as you know, race issues, as you mentioned before, have become more of a talking point in the last few weeks, especially interracial relationships. They have become a national talking point since last week following the Orchard Road racist incident. So how did you guys react to that incident and the race discussions that followed?
I think I'll take this one first. Yeah, I saw it, and to be very honest, if I removed all my emotions and just looked at it very objectively, initially I didn't feel that. I think Mr. Tan was his name. I wasn't very insulted by what he said at the beginning because he had a personal opinion, right? He had a preference that people should date within their own race, and if that's his preference, then that's fine. But I think where then it crossed the line and it became an issue was when he decided to impose that opinion on someone, and when they didn't bite, he incited hatred and kind of then insulted a whole group of people by calling them predators and also calling out the girlfriend as a disgrace to a family. And I think when you do that, then that becomes an issue, and it's more than just race. It's larger than that.
Yeah, I think adding on to that, we had a discussion as well at length, and I think the conclusion that we came to was that I think it's more than a race issue that Abraham have said. I think today it can be race, tomorrow it can be gender, the next day it could be religion. I think if we take a bird's eye view on this topic at large, I think it's more of a moral issue that we as a society is facing than just race itself.
Right, for sure.
Yeah, I think people need to understand the fine line between freedom of speech and being offensive. Yeah.
Yep, good points there, guys. Well, you have a 2-year-old daughter, Diana. What are your parenting beliefs when it comes to raising her now as a toddler, and also, when she grows up, when she becomes an adolescent and a teenager eventually?
So I think being a mother myself, babies are not born racist, right? What their opinions are going to be in the future, their viewpoints in society is all being molded by parents and caregivers, right? So I would say, I think in the generations to come, right, in 10, 20 years time, when Diana grows up, I think with more mixed marriages like ourselves, it's going to be harder to then, differentiate if Diana is an Indian, Chinese, Malay. And I think where we hope society will become one day in the years to come really is, identifying ourselves as Singaporeans is really hard. I think in that time, if you really want to pinpoint someone, if they are Malay or Chinese, it's really difficult.
Yeah, I wouldn't want Diana to grow up like in a box that's labeled. Like, I often find that in my life that happened to me. I'm labeled as an Indian, right? But what really makes me Indian, I'm not from India, neither are my parents nor grandparents, so maybe one of my ancestors 6 generations ago was born in India, and because I have high melanin content in my skin, I'm now Indian as a label. And now together we're put in another box, interracial couple, like we're a thing now. Like people look at us and don't just say, hey, you're a Singaporean couple, but like, you're a mixed marriage couple, you're an interracial couple, it's like your thing. And I don't want that to happen to Diana, to become like labeled as something unique or different. I think because if you put people in a box, you start to put traits on them, and you start to then, with differences, conflict can thrive. So I really hope that one day in the future, all these boxes can be shattered and we can all be called like a Singaporean in love with another Singaporean. And that's really the hope that I have for Diana, and that she would grow up in such a world where she's really free to love whomever she chooses to love.
Well, very well said. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've been speaking with Abraham Christopher and Jacqueline Louis. We want to hear from you on this topic, so leave your comments below, but of course, do keep them respectful. A quick wrap of the local headlines before I go. 60-year-old Ong Eng Siu was charged in court today with attempted murder. He allegedly attacked another man with a knife last Saturday at a car park in Tua Chu Kang Avenue 3. According to the police, preliminary investigation showed that Ong knew the victim, and if found guilty, he can be jailed but not caned, as he is above 50 years old. Moving on, in a bid to help its drivers increase their earnings, Gojek will halve the driver commission it receives from next Monday, June 21st, until at least end 2022. This means its drivers will get to keep 90% of a trip fare instead of the current 80%. Gojek will also introduce a payout of $3 to drivers who have to drive 3 kilometers or more to pick up their passenger. With private sector analysts not expecting the recent COVID-19 restrictions to weigh heavily on the economy, they've raised their forecast for Singapore's economic growth this year to 6.5%, up from the 5.8% estimated in March. This is above the government's forecast range of 4 to 6%. The growth forecast for next year has also been raised to 4%, up from 3.8% tipped in March. For more news and videos, do visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay. See you tomorrow on The Big Story.